Hello, everybody. Welcome to Blue Star Rising, Templar Awakening. This is Michael Henry Dunn here with our good friend, Reverend Maia Nartoomid. Hello, Maia. How are you doing?
Hello, Michael, and hello, everyone. Justin,
Yeah.
thanks.
So we've got, we go into sacred science and we go into it in depth and detail. And that's the unique thing that we offer on Blue Star Rising. And so come with us as we go really deep into one of the deepest subjects you're likely to come across. Nothing less than the nature of the holographic universe itself. So uh, Maia has prepared a deep dive um, for us into the sacred science she has received around this concept. I've done a fair amount of reading now and again about the holographic paradigm. The work of David Bohm um, and others in this regard. But I like to think I'm pretty much in the same demographic, shall we say, as most of our audience in terms of having heard of this concept of a holograph is, or a hologram is something in which the entire whole is contained within each part. Each constituent element contains within it the whole. So I'm pretty much a layperson in regard to this. And Maia, do you want to just say a few words about the video we're about to see?
Yeah. Well, as I was telling Michael, it's really not not something that would be make sense if we just kind of skipped over the details. The details are scientific. And the video you're going to see is 27 minutes long. However, I think you're going to find it really interesting. And I give a little preface that helps you get into it. A breathe deep kind of preface that gets you into your heart center so that we can flow with this and you don't have to freeze up about, facts. It's like, let's just get into the greater picture of it all. And I think you're going to find it really interesting. So we're going to watch that, and then we get back, then we'll flesh it in. Talk about really why does it matter to us right now? It's if we're in a hologram, so we're in a hologram, big deal, but it is a big deal, and we're dealing with it now in this current reality, and that's part of what we're going through. So that part we're going to talk about after you see the video.
All right, then. So please relax and enjoy. We can promise you this will be engrossing and engaging and a dive into a subject that is well worth our attention and that has to do with the nature of the reality that we are living and breathing in right this very second. So with that, we'll begin the video now and we'll rejoin you as soon as it's done.
What you're about to hear is rather scientific. It's very multidimensional. The brain can kind of seize up on things like this. So I'm going to ask you to move past your mental capacity and go into the heart-centered consciousness. This is really what all of my quantum teachings of Thoth are about. Yes, there are words and there's science involved and there are things of this nature, and certainly you can be present with those things mentally if that is something that resonates with you in order to really involve yourself with it. But it's not a place you have to go, not entirely. In order to truly understand the dimensionality of the sciences, which I believe Thoth is presenting through me,
it's necessary for you to expand your realm. And the only way to really do that is, again, to go into heart-centered consciousness. And you don't have to be a guru or a meditator to do this. Not that that isn't a good thing to be, but that's not where you need to be for this, where you have to be for this. So I'm going to ask you at this moment, before we begin talking about it all, to just take some moments with me and feel the essence of your heart. Go into that center space. Connect. Feel the lightness, the unqualified intelligence of the heart. Something that is not, that it doesn't take an IQ test, that is beyond all of that kind of intelligence and moves into a divine intelligence, a knowing. Go beyond the learned frequency of the mind and into the knowing frequency. So take a few deep breaths and feel that connection in your heart now. So now let us begin. In around 1985, Thoth introduced me to the name New Earth Star as that realm or world experience this planet would become through an ascension process. By the year 2000 or so, Thoth began to refer to the New Earth Star hologram as developing on, within, and around Earth, the Merkaba for ascension of the planet into the New Earth Star state of being. In 2013, Thoth brought forth into my mind the Pyramidus Radius Matrix, or PRM, a new Earth grid forming which is now the primary matrix for this planet's ascension or transformation frequency shift into the New Earth Star consciousness realm. The PRM is establishing a holographic field of pyramids upon this planet. The entire purpose of these hollow pyramids has not yet been revealed to me, but basically they are the main engine of orchestrating the transfer of molecular stability from a World System 1 to a World System 2 creation zone. In order to understand the formation of these hollow pyramids, one needs to see them as holograms forming within holograms. In the last few years, I have seen a lot of mention about the holographic universe. This certainly rang a bell for me. I came across an excellent work by Stephen Davis called The Holographic Universe Workshops. It was really amazing for me to read about this topic, given the references to the holographic consciousness which Thoth had revealed to me through the years, but I had never pieced it all together before. In order to further discuss my Akashic insights on the universe as a hologram, I feel it necessary to include some excerpts from Stephen Davis's workshop. Mr. Davis stresses that he is presenting a working model of the hypotheses he puts forth as to the construction and nature of the holographic universe, and it is therefore subject to revision. It is how he is perceiving it at this time, or rather when he presented the workshops. He also gives quite a lot of scientific information from scientists and researchers around the world. And so we shall begin with an excerpt from the Holographic Universe workshops by Stephen Davis in his book, The Holographic Universe. Michael Talbot says, "There is compelling evidence that the only time quanta electrons ever manifest as particles is when we are looking at them. When an electron isn't being looked at, It is always a wave. Davis continues, to put it the other way around, the nature of an electron is a wave. It only pops up out of its wave state to form a particle in a specific location in space and time when it is being observed. Then, when it is not being observed, it goes back into its wave state. But it turns out that it's not just the electrons that pop in and out of existence. And then Mr. Davis says, listen to Jeffrey Statenover. Matter is not what we have long thought it to be. To the scientist, matter has always been thought of as sort of the ultimate in that which is static and predictable. We like to think of space as empty and matter as solid, but in fact, there is essentially nothing to matter whatsoever. It is completely insubstantial. And so now, next, Mr. Davis talks about virtual realities. In the following excerpt, Mr. Davis is comparing quantum physics to a video game, which is a virtual reality. Basically, unless the player is looking at something in the video game, it doesn't exist. It disappears, only to pop back up later if the player looks at it again. This is how quantum physics is telling us that our reality works as well. It means that our reality is not as real as we have always thought it was. Instead, as you hear many quantum physicists say, it pops in and out of existence. And so now I say, this is an important question, but before we continue with Stephen Davis's answer, I wish to inject at this point that Thoth disagrees with the assumption reality is not real. Thus, he also does not qualify a hologram as not being real. How so? Well, he also tells me that everything is real and reality is entirely perception. Okay, so that sounds like he is saying reality is not real. But to follow Thoth's sight, it is helpful to realize that a being such as Thoth dwells in higher subtle energy states that are, relative to us, omnipresent, existing everywhere at once. From that mountaintop, what is real is indeed everything one can perceive and everything one cannot perceive. This may seem like splitting hairs, but Thoth stresses to me the fallibility of seeing things as not real. We cannot be fully present with or within something that we do not conceive as real, not even in order to disengage ourselves from it. To quote again from Mr. Davis, so if matter is not solid and reality is not real, what is this physical universe that we experience and think of as so solid, that looks and feels so real to us? Two models have been developed to answer that question. One is the field, and the other is the holographic universe. The field mainly is just called the field. It is a field of unlimited possibilities out of which everything is created. Lynn McTaggart, author of The Field, defines it as a field of all possibility. In other words, everything you can think of, and everything you can't think of, and everything no one has thought of yet, already exists in wave form in the field. The field is a place outside of space-time where everything, all possibilities, already exist, but only in wave form. This field does not contain particles. It is not matter. It is not part of the physical universe. Instead, it is what the entire universe is made from these waves of possibilities. The problem is that no one can prove that the field exists. You can't see it. You can't photograph it. You can't measure it. You can't hold it in your hand. But when quantum physics assume that the field is there, they can make incredibly accurate mathematical predictions about the physical universe and how it behaves, which they cannot do without assuming the field is there. And now I say, I believe that the field mentioned above is what Thoth is calling the Genesis field. He defines it as a Genesis field is a dynamic, intelligent energy field responding to the impulse of creation. It is designed by universal intelligence to create specific ordered worlds. These worlds can be as small as the head of a pin, probably smaller, or as large as giant planets, stars, and even universes. How is reality created from the field? Most quantum physicists agree that it is a very similar process to the creation of a hologram. In other words, the universe that we see is a holographic universe. The technical definition from the Merriam-Webster dictionary is that a hologram is, quote, a three-dimensional image reproduced from a two-dimensional pattern of interference produced by a split coherent beam of radiation as a laser, unquote. Scientific evidence suggests that the entire universe is a holographic projection around the Earth. Here's what is said specifically, and I quote, German scientists have been trying to understand why their equipment that measures gravitational waves has been picking up a particular sound. One possible answer that they've come up with is that the entire universe is a holographic illusion. For many months, the GEO 600 team members have been scratching their heads over inexplicable noise that is plaguing their giant detector. Then, out of the blue, a researcher approached them with an explanation. In fact, he had even predicted the noise before he knew they were detecting it. According to Craig Hogan, a physicist at the Fermilab Particle Physics Lab in Bavatia, Illinois, GEO 600 has stumbled upon the fundamental limit of space-time, the point where space-time stops behaving like the smooth continuum Einstein described and instead dissolves into grains, just as a newspaper photograph dissolves into dots as you zoom in. It looks like GEO 600 is being buffeted by the microscopic quantum convulsions of space-time, says Hogan. If this doesn't blow your socks off, then Hogan, who has just been appointed director of Fermilab's Center for Particle Astrophysics, has an even bigger shock in store. If the GEO 600 result is what I suspect it is, then we are all living in a giant cosmic hologram. Now that's the end of quotes, and I return to myself. I say, we pause for a moment in Davis's discourse to go to Thoth once again. I quote from the Akashic Definitions section of my Spirit Mythos website. The Akashic definition of tetranome, that's T-E-T-R-A-N-O-M-E. This is a Thoth speak word. A high metatronic, full-light creational field generator. The active modality of the tetranome begins with a Star of David and expands from the center outward at two opposite axes to create a seagull or spinning energy field. Such a field produces a flashing rhombus at its center that exchanges information between universes. In a further stage of the expansion, the tetranome becomes a tetratrion. Tetratrions are hyperspace tetrahedrons with open ends connecting to one another to form dimensional transference zones. It is through the tetratrions that energy travels between different dimensions. The tetranome exchanges information and therefore building blocks of light mathematics. The tetratrion accelerates the whole dynamic to allow manifestational energy to travel from one dimension to another. However, one cannot really separate a tetranome from a tetratrion, as the former is simply a foundational stage of the latter, and the latter can be activated through the geometry of the former. The ascension of this Earth into the new Earth star will be created through tetratrionic activity. The tetratrion is the sought-after God particle. Tetratrion activity can be found within the M-star molecule as well. This is something we've spoken about at length before, the M-star molecule, which is the quantum God-based point of reference within the human experience. This, in a lay term, for the Higgs boson, this is I'm going to go back again. This is a lay term for the Higgs boson, which is a hypothetical particle with zero spin. It is neutral and may be responsible for giving other particles mass. This elementary particle was named after the physicist Peter Higgs, who proposed the theory in 1964. The standard model in particle physics depends on the existence of the Higgs boson. According to the standard model, none of the subatomic particles have mass, so they must obtain it from interacting with the Higgs field. Now that's a quote, of course, from the definition of a Higgs boson, not from the Thothic material, but as you can see, it aligns rather well with Thoth's definition of the tetranome and the tetratrion. Assembling the pieces, one might assume that the Higgs field is the same as Davis's the field, which I just stated is the same as Thoth's Genesis field. But I could be wrong about the Higgs field as being the field, since I have not really studied either hypothesis. I delved into my Thoth definitions for the tetranome, as I felt this quantum process is key to how the universal hologram is created. Not the whole picture, but definitely a big factor. Stephen Davis goes on to quote from Michael Talbot in his book, The Holographic Universe. Bohm helped establish the foundation for Pybram's theory that the brain operates in a manner similar to a hologram, in accordance with quantum mathematical principles, and the characteristics of wave patterns. Technically, Talbot continues, Pybram believes memories are encoded not in neurons or small groupings of neurons, but in patterns of nerve impulses that crisscross the entire brain, in the same way that patterns of laser light interference crisscrosses the entire area of a piece of film containing a holographic image. In other words, Pybram believes the brain in itself is a hologram. Just as a hologram functions as a sort of lens, a translating device able to convert an apparently meaningless blur of frequencies into a coherent image, Pybram believes the brain also comprises a lens and uses holographic principles to mathematically convert the frequencies it receives through the senses into the inner world of our perceptions. In short, Pybram believes our brains mathematically construct hard reality by relying on input from a frequency domain. Our brains construct our holographic physical reality after receiving and based on wave frequencies from the field. Now, I'm returning to myself here, as I say, back to our referencing of Thoth's Akasha from Spirit Mythos article, The Quantum Cube. The Q-cube is a holographic intelligence field within the DNA. It is also simultaneously everywhere, as it quantumizes through all universal energy fields. The Q-cube is what might be called a string synthesizer. This term refers to what the scientists are calling the string theory. The Q-cube is an intelligent universal resonance. Its seat in humanity is in the living heart. The DNA factor is its workforce, but the place where it establishes its initial intelligent connection is in the heart. By focusing on and talking to the Q-cube, or the intelligence of the heart, we restore our own resonating membranes within the intelligent field. All illness and disease is a product of the deterioration of the quantum membrane. Taking care of one's mental and physical health in a holistic manner helps to rebuild and strengthen the quantum membrane, but it is not enough if one wishes to reach union and live in immortal physical bodies that can move in and out of the realms of being, in and out of space and time, without the tiresome and often painful process of growing old and dying. The Q-cube, or the quantum cube, coats us as whole beings when we resonate with the all. Perhaps this is the quantum version of a coat of many colors. Now let us look at the brain for a moment. The true seat of the universal within the being is not in the cranial brain, but within the heart brain. The brain in the head is the grunt for the brain in the heart. That is a whole subject unto itself, and there is much science to back it up, most especially from the Institute of Heart Math. So the hologram of universal projection enters through our heart and then is transmitted to the brain in the head. The DNA and the heart get it simultaneously. Stephen Davis writes, and I quote, "According to the latest scientific research, we are projecting our reality first and then perceiving it coming back to us. The bird first arrives in our brain as wave frequencies downloaded from the field. The brain then translates these wave frequencies into a hologram of the bird by collapsing the wave function. That hologram is then projected out there so that the bird appears to be real, and then the bird comes back to us through our physical perceptions." There's an old New Age saying, "You create your own reality." While this is technically not true, what is true is you are projecting your own unique holographic 3D experience that has been downloaded from the field to your brain. Now, returning to myself, I say, well, yes, from the Thothic perspective, this is so, except that it is the heart brain and DNA that receives the holographic streaming first. However, if we look at the greater schematic, we are co-creators in the reality we perceive, and we can affect the universal hologram. But the we or I involved in the affecting is not the part we harbor in our incarnated flesh, in our physical DNA. It comes from what Davis is calling the infinite I, or that part, Thoth calls it a flash, of the infinite I, that is the magna-soul. Those are a Thothic term, magna-soul. I don't have much written material on the magna-soul, but was told about it from my Akashic sources even before Thoth consciously communed with me. Basically, my current understanding of it is a flash recognition, and I am created within the greater intelligence of Source. The flash, that is the magna-soul, projects the I into incarnation in multiple zones simultaneously, sometimes more than one projection per electromagnetic zone. So if we extend the I to include the magna, then yes, we are part of the Genesis field, the creation experience. But no, we cannot manipulate it from the point of projected state, i.e. the incarnation. What we can do with incarnation is to perceive, to express, and to choose our formats and our role plays within the parameters of the magna-soul imprint in our DNA, which in turn evolves the God factor we experience in our lives and ultimately face matches with the view from the top of the mountain. As an aside, I find it intriguing that Stephen Davis chooses to call the universal intelligence the infinite I, as in the 1970s I akashically translated a Lemurian book called The Book of I, but this is little I, two little I's. Maybe short for the infinite I? Well, I don't think the people of Mu wrote or spoke English, but if you remove that sticking point, and in quantum world you can, the definition I was given then for I is the sacred nothing. Further, it is that which is, beyond filling it up with something. Well then, who or what is creating the holographic universe? Or to be more accurate, universes, possibly ad infinitum? I don't know, but it certainly impresses me. Thoth is emphatic that it is not aliens. Some of them may understand it better than we do for the most part, but it is much bigger than any species of physical or even non-physical being. According to Thoth, there really is no physical and non-physical, just gradients of entanglement. The one clue Thoth has revealed to me is that in order to find the answer, we need to look not outward, but inward, not bigger, but smaller.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Well, that was, I think, such a beautiful balance between, yes, I mean, a lot of heavy, profound, and sometimes, so dense and interwoven an exploration into this material that, I certainly lost the thread here and there, but the overall impact of it, I think, is clear and powerful. And, we always bring up, it's a little subtitle beneath our main headline at Blue Star Rising, that we are about applied sacred science for the global crisis. And we often bring up over on my other show that I do, Radio 5G, with Nancy Hopkins, which, it's focused on alerting people to the dangers of the 5G rollout, but it necessarily covers a lot of other material, including this kind of material. And Nancy keeps reminding people over there the reason, for example, that shungite can work in the way that it does, that the shungite field can be worked with consciously, with intention, is because of quantum reality. And when we talk about what are the most effective tools that we have in our hands, what's the leverage that we can use in the midst of all this confusion and fear and chaos that threatens to overwhelm us, what are the tools we have that are the most powerful, that are more powerful than our votes on the first Tuesday in November, more powerful even than all the, the activism and the demonstrators and the protests and on both sides of the political spectrum? Where is the real leverage? And when it comes down to what you mentioned at the beginning, Maia, about how important this subject is for all of us to understand, I think it ties back to that. It ties back to the question of, consciousness and the nature of reality are our teachers in this moment of crisis as to how we can behave, how we can use this understanding of reality, how we can use this heart-centered understanding of our divine sovereign power to affect what we call reality. There's a quote from Aldous Huxley's book, The Perennial Philosophy. I don't happen to recall who it's from, but it's always stuck in my mind, which is regarding the subject of reality. And it says, reality is incredible. Reality is a whirlwind. What we call reality, right? Like, yes, what we call reality is a false god, the dull eye of custom. It's like, come on, it's the desk, it's my lunch, it's the hot dog in the oven, come on, just, get down to earth here, be real. Okay, well, we're being very real on Blue Star Rising. So you want to take us some places in your own thoughts about this, Maia?
Well, I think that that if all that I read to you. I obviously was reading it from an article I had compiled and put together some years ago, that I feel is the most pertinent. And of course, that's there's a lot of pertinent stuff in there, but I mean, from the part, the point of view of just getting real with it, is that we can't, from the Thothic perspective, we can't dismiss it until we have accepted it. So we can't say, oh, the hologram isn't real, so we don't have to deal with that. We're just going to float up in the clouds and pretend it doesn't exist because it's really just not real, right? We exist in this illusion, and nothing could be further from the truth. Everything we can perceive and everything we can't perceive is real, in the sense that we have to accept it even before we can disengage it. So all the yucky stuff, we can't just turn a blind eye. We have to accept it, and we need to do it in a way that that is not fearful and is not judgmental. I know, wow, that's a big one, especially right now. But if we realize it's a hologram, and we realize that the hologram is the servant of the soul, not the other way around, then we can say, okay, so we live in a hologram, and that hologram is contingent on the way we view it. Particle wave, and the way we view it will make a difference in the creation of the next moment in our hologram. So it gives us power, but the power is not we don't have power if we just turn our back on it. Say, well, it's not real. I'm waiting until I die, then I'm going to go to heaven. That'll be real. That's not the way it works, So we have to engage it, but we engage it from a place of heart-centered consciousness where we are not constantly criticizing it. That when I say criticize, we can call it out. We can say, hey, this ain't right, But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the critical energy that goes right in the gut. You feel it. You go, oh, that's terrible. Ugh, you feel it. That's what has to be released. You go, oh, that's terrible. Let me brace it deeply in the heart. Let me feel the pain from a sense of coherence. And then I can disengage it, but not disengage it blindly, disengage the feeling of it, so that I can then create the reality that is most definitive of the new Earth star, of where we want to go with this, of the holistic field, of the Metatronic full light field. So, it's not about trying to make the world all fluffy and bright. You have to accept where we are, and then engage it, then embrace it in your heart, and then you can disengage the aspects of it that are holding you back, that are holding us all back.
Yes, it reminds me of a couple of things. First of all, the truism, people say, oh, reality is an illusion, it's Maia, the Vedic term for illusion. And the truly saintly people have come to this realization. They have risen above our, pathetic understanding of, 3D reality, and they are floating off into a world of detachment from the illusions, therefore the hardships and pains of the world, because they just meditated for, 20 hours a day for 60 incarnations, and there they are. Well, that's not what, for example, Paramahansa Yogananda, who is acknowledged as having been, one of the great souls of modern times as a yoga master. For example, his beloved disciple, Yanamata, was ill and was near death. And because of his, intimate relationship with the divine, he was able to successfully engage in what he called a tug of war with God in order to keep Yanamata in the body, because he didn't want his dear disciple, beloved friend, to leave. Right? Now we are talking about an avatar. And that is a term that's thrown around a lot. Oh, you got an avatar in your video game. Oh, let's go see the movie Avatar. Well, like the word guru, it's been cheapened, and to descend from full Metatronic realization into flesh, it's a different sort of thing. But by all accounts, Yogananda was in that state. And he finally absented himself from the hermitage where, Gyanamata, or the hospital where she was, and left in order to allow his own attachment to her to not keep her in place. It's like, okay, Lord, I release her to you. So she died. And then at her memorial service, with all the disciples present to honor this great soul, Yogananda was weeping and sobbing. And of course, the disciples are going, oh, Master, Gyanamata's soul is free now. She is with the divine. You should be happy. And he says, I know. I know that. Right? He's one with the Divine Mother himself. But he said, but as a human, I take it into my heart. I am sad that I will never see her again in that dear, sweet human form in which I knew my dear friend, Yanamata. And yes, she smiles at me in every flower and from every star because she is now one with omnipresence. But, so he did this exact thing you described. The great saints know that you don't lose your human feelings, your emotions, your empathy, your sadness or grief at the loss of a friend. You take them in, you experience them, and then you recognize their place in the larger reality. And then, yes, you are free and you move on. If you just pretend and go, oh, I'm saintly, I have to be saintly, I'm detached, I don't really miss my friend because they're smiling at me in every flower. Well, no, you've got unreleased emotional charge locked into your human form because you are denying that reality, and it's going to linger and probably fester and probably manifest in some kind of illness if you don't release it. Anyway, does that resonate for you?
Definitely. And it's encouraging because, we all of us who have some modicum of enlightenment, strive to do better and better and better, which is the true current that brings us to the light. But at the same time, we feel we fall short, and that's where the self-judgment comes, and that's what holds us back. In order to move past that, in a way, we just should be like a little child. Okay, I had my moment of tantrum, and now, oh, look at the flower, and they don't go back and go, oh my God, I was such a little mess, I should have done. They move forward. Now, I'm not saying we should not have a conscience. That's not what I'm talking about. We should recognize where we've been and what we're, but at the same time, as Scarlett O'Hara said, tomorrow is another day. So we need to, to take in what we conceive as the failure, the moment of stumbling, as the Bible says, missing the mark. Actually, sin, the word sin, it means missing the mark. That's what it means. And so, we missed the mark. Okay, we acknowledge that. But tomorrow's another day, and look at that cloud, and look at that flower. And, I feel like a really saintly person today, and you can move into that space and experience it. And each time you falter and you move into the space of your saintlyhood, you can feel it a little more because you're developing it. You're developing that path within your being. Back to the holographic universe, what is it but a platform, an absolute platform, just a moment, to allow us to do that. Because if everything was set absolutely set in stone, as we have come to think it is, there would be no wiggle room. There would be no way for us to create our new universe, to create a new dynamic that helps us move into the light more specifically. Because we're all different, we're all together, we're all one in the bigger picture, but we have all these different aspects of us, different karmas, different dharmas, and all of these things. So we create our little mini hologram within a bigger hologram, within a bigger hologram, within a bigger hologram. There are membranes within membranes within membranes. And those membranes communicate through the tetratrions. They communicate back and forth all the time. So they're always adjusting frequencies. So you can do the smallest thing in your little hologram, and it will adjust for you. And so we have to realize that if that's the case, then we have a power to redress wrongs on a global scale. And every human being placing their signal into that membrane that goes to the bigger membrane, that goes to the bigger membrane, is helping to adjust the bigger picture for everyone. Now, by the same token, people that are doing things that are not so good, taking thoughts that are rather dark, and taking actions that are actually quite evil, they're affecting that hologram too, unfortunately, because you can't have it just one way. But when they affect the hologram, when the negative energies, let's call it, rather than people, affects the hologram, it is a limited moment. When light affects the hologram, it is an expansive moment. And I didn't use.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm going to replace the word limited, although it is limited, with contracted. Darkness affects the hologram as a contraction, and light affects the hologram as an expansion.
Yeah, I saw a study in which the goal of it was to determine whether positive interactions between people, encouraging words, a smile, positive impressions given to people, how far those ripples spread out in terms of, you come up to a woman at a checkout counter, you smile, you say, "Hey, good morning. Wow, what a pretty scarf that is you've got. Oh, thank you so much for, have a beautiful day." Just these sort of sweet human exchanges. They found a way to track, okay, how far did that ripple go? How expanded did that light become? Did that person who received that warmth, how long did that continue in their field as they gave it forward and as those other people gave it forward? And then they also did the reverse, but give me my damn groceries, get on my way, you're taking too long, it's like, this place ought to go out of business, get out, right? They did that. And that, had an effect, but they actually were able to track it such that they demonstrated, what you're describing, that the positive interactions, the ripples, went much further out and lasted much longer than the negative, which tended to contract and dissipate more quickly. So it's an interesting example of that on the human level.
Yes, it is. And one of the things that we're really being tested with right now, and I spoke about judgment, but it's even more than that, is a feeling of repulsion to so much negativity that we're seeing, because it's been there on many levels and we haven't seen it that deeply. But everything is we all, I think many people, this is not just my idea, it's breaking apart. And as it's breaking apart, it's revealing, but it's breaking apart. That's the good news, to disintegrate. However, right now, it doesn't seem that way. Even if we logically spiritually, though it's breaking apart, we're still feeling the experience. We're still seeing the experience of really terrible things and really disgusting things. And so how do we, as every time we have a feeling like that, of repulsion, we feed what Thoth is calling the archonic cloud. We feed the virus. He called the archonic cloud a virus long before this other thing happened. And he says, we're feeding that virus that is feeding back into the human beings who live on it, who really want it, and the virus feeds on them, So how do we, adjust that? That's a big question I ask myself, because I see things that I just break into tears over, and I just think that's the most disgusting thing I've ever seen in my life, recently, with all that's going on. So it's a conundrum. But from the Thothic perspective, again, we have to feel certain emotions, but every time we feel that kind of gut-wrenching disgust, we need to move into a place of compassion. And when I say compassion, I'm not going, oh, poor little guy. I mean, so what if he tortured a bunch of kids? I mean, poor fella, he had a rough life. I'm sure we don't want to go there. No, but the compassion is for the soul that has trapped itself in such a horrific state that, even the souls of its victims are going to move on. They're going to go to the light. They're going to experience better lives. They're going to become stronger and more loving. The soul that is trapped in that kind of evil will not experience that, not for a long, long time. I'm not saying they're not redeemable, but I'm saying it's going to be a long, long road. And it probably already has been, because they've been adding to it, adding to it, adding to it. So instead of just saying, well, I want them out of my space, let's leave them behind, we're going to go to the New Star, all those evil people can just go rot in, where. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way, because all souls are in a process of redefining their structure, their connections. And the souls that are so lost, they're going to go their other way. They're not going to just climb up the magic beanstalk at first. But we're still connected to those souls in some way, intrinsically, until they are able to be redeemed and brought into the light, because it's all one big package. So it's not as simple as saying it's all one, and it's not as simple as saying we can leave that evil stuff behind. We can leave the evil stuff behind. I want to correct myself. We can leave the evil stuff behind, but we can't leave the souls behind, because no matter what, they're souls of God. And so, that's when we recognize that, and we're seeing somebody that's just, we need to go to a place of saying, okay, I know this is terrible, and there's no excuse for what they're doing or have done. But I must look at the bigger picture and know that somewhere in that morass, there's a God spark. And I'm going to focus on that God spark. And I'm going to bring it into my heart and materialize it. And that doesn't mean that that person's going to receive Jesus or Buddha or whatever, but it does mean that you are, because you've released yourself from that cycle,
Yeah. This is reminding me of a story I heard from Enelia Benz, from an interview she did, maybe about 7-8 years ago. And Enelia Benz is a rather remarkable mystic and a teacher of ascension dynamics and how to process fear out of your being and things like that. She's from Chile originally, and her story is she came in fresh from source, no incarnations, with a dharma to help people process out fear in this ascension transition, right? So she married and had children, and then came more fully into her work about 7-8 years ago. She does really interesting work. And she told a story in this interview about being called by spirit to, on a astral travel departure from her body at night, a number of nights in a row, with the assignment to go to the home of a very dark soul, sort of a master dark wizard, a dark sorcerer of the Cabal, a very high-level power figure who had embraced evil consciously and deliberately for many incarnations and had achieved, a very high level of power, and of course had assumed a horrific karmic load. Now, I don't know if I told you this story or not. Does this sound familiar to you, Maia?
No, it doesn't. I'm very interested in hearing about it.
Yeah, so her assignment was to go in astral form to the home of this man, this large estate, of course. And that this is a figure whose name is known, but she didn't divulge it. And her assignment was to go into his presence, and he would perceive who and what she was and that she was there. And to essentially write down, on some kind of astral means, his life story as he told it to her, because he had achieved all these great high levels, as Mr. Ollivander says in Harry Potter to Harry when he's giving him his wand, when we're talking about the word great, and he hands him the wand that shares the core with, the same phoenix feather as Voldemort, and says, it is very interesting that you should be destined for this wand when its brother gave you that scar, and says, well, who owned that wand? He said, we do not speak his name, but I think it is clear, Mr. Potter, that we can expect great things from you, because he who must not be named did great things. Terrible, yes, but great, right? So this guy is in the same category where he needed, for his soul evolution, and for some reason it was an assignment for her, a number of successive nights to record as he shared these absolutely horrific, appalling, sickening things that he had done to achieve his position of great power. And she describes being, going into this space and feeling this vibration of evil and thinking, this is what evil feels like. And so she did this for several successive nights and said it was, but because of her nature, she was not in judgment around this soul. She was sort of neutrally recording it. And it came to the final session, and the story was done, and she was simply being present to him. And because of her nature, it's as you describe, she was in what we might call angelic consciousness of no judgment of him, of unconditional positive regard, having witnessed, bore witness to all these absolutely horrible things he had done. And in response to him perceiving this unconditional positive regard from this being who sort of came fresh from source, this little twinge of remorse and regret and desire for grace came into his being. And because of her nature and connection to source, she said what took place at that moment was an explosion of light and grace of such magnitude, because his soul opened to the possibility of redemption. Such magnitude of grace and light came in that it took millions of years of karmic debt because of what this man had done, was expiated, dissolved, and he made a massive quantum leap into a state of grace. And she told this story, and she said, and people I told the story to said, that's appalling. How could this soul be so instantly redeemed and not suffer the consequences of all those horrible things that he did? That is so unjust. And she said, well, what you need to realize is that when that level of darkness was expiated and redeemed and dissolved, the level of consciousness and frequency on the whole planet rose significantly because of the expiation of that darkness. So, small price to pay that one soul who deliberately embraced terrible evil should be redeemed without suffering the consequences. Well, when it helped the entire forward movement of the consciousness of humanity, because that great darkness on our planet was expiated and disappeared. I don't know, that may seem a little bit of a divergence, that story, but I felt prompted to share it.
No, it's not a divergence at all. I think it's absolutely appropriate. You know, Thoth has said to me that as the archonic energy starts to shift, it starts to break up because it can no longer work with the magnetic. Okay, let me start over again because I'm getting my words all tangled up here. We're going through a planetary pole shift. We know that, okay? And we're going through solar forcing. That's the term that's used. It's not global, it's solar forcing. Yes, it's getting warmer, it's getting colder, it's getting warmer, it's getting colder, but it's going toward an ice age. And so we're going through all of that, and we're going through a pole shift. This is not something we can change. We can learn to, we can come into a state of resonance, and miracles can happen, what we call miracles, but we can't change it. That doesn't mean that we should keep on polluting the planet. Of course not. We need to stop that. But I'm just saying that this solar forcing thing is not fixable, and neither is the pole shift. So we're going through this. And this means that the magnetic field is changing. Now, I've been discussing this with some of my inner earth cronies. And they have been telling me, and of course, it will affect them as well, not in the same way, but it will affect them as well. And they've been talking to me a little bit about it. But one of the things that's going to happen, or that I'm seeing in all of this that they're showing me, and that Thoth is showing me, is that the souls that are so extremely archonically invested, like the one you were speaking of, Michael, and that are into, you know, child sacrifice, all of this stuff, those that are so completely absorbed into that field, when the magnetic shifting starts, that is, and then the archonic, because the archonic cloud, which is entirely attached to magnetism, lower magnetism. And the lower magnetism comes out of us holding the planet at a lower level frequency through our own lower magnetic energies from our, you know, the stuff that's going on in us. So when we do that, then the archonic cloud could go zap, it could hold on, because that's what it uses to hold on with. And when it holds on, it starts to feed, and it feeds through the souls that are pumping it up and giving it fear and hatred, all of this, and greed and all of this stuff. All of us on the planet are part of that experience. We all are feeding the archonic energy to some degree. But then there are the ones that are really feeding it, that are just so invested in it, it's almost, you can't separate the two. But when this shift starts, the magnetic level changing, because so many people on the planet are waking up, and a natural shift is going along that is helping to wake them up. It's kind of like, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Because both of these things are going on at once. So as that happens, the archonic cloud is going to start breaking up. Not magically, it'll take time, and it's going to happen through stages and all of this, but it's breaking up. It's already doing it. So it's not going to be supporting those, what we call evil forces. So what's going to happen to the souls that have been gorging themselves on this energy? Because that energy has been gorging itself on them. Well, Thoth just literally showed me a picture. It was like these people were made of like a statue, like clay, hardened clay. And there would come a point when they would just start cracking and the clay starts cracking. This was, of course, metaphorical, but you know, the clay's cracking and little lightning sparks are coming out. It was kind of a cool picture. And out of it pops this person, like, oh my God, where was I all this time? And of course, again, this was a symbol, but the point is that the soul that's been squeezed down in there because of their own stuff for many, are suddenly can breathe again. And they go, wait a minute, I don't want to live like this. This is awful. So not that, you know, it's going to happen magically and everybody's going to be giving everybody flowers and everything. There's a process. Unfortunately, there is a process, but it's going to happen a lot more rapidly now because we're in the final stages, moving into the nitty gritty of Ishatan, the latter days, when these things take place and the changes are made and the things are swept away. Now, does that mean that every single soul is going to break open? No, well, they will in a way, but what will happen will be that the souls, not all of those souls are going to say, well, I'm opting for the new earth. They're going to be stunned. They're going to be like, I don't know where I want to die. You know, they're just going to be like that. They're going to need to go into a rest home. They're going to need to go into another world where they can, you know, build them back up. And, you know, so they're not going to be ready for the new Earth star. I'm not saying none of them will be, but mostly that will be the case for those souls that are that, you know, that off. So, but at the same time, what's going on is a redressment of all of these energies to sort it out, get it ready for the next stage. These go here, these go here. It's not punishment. It is giving the path that needs to be opened for that individual soul. Now, when you look at this, you have to think, well, who's doing this? You know, is it the angels? Is it the luminaries like Thoth? Is it the aliens? You know, who's managing all this stuff? And every time I ask Thoth that, I don't get the full answer. I guess my brain would explode if I did. But he says, it's natural. He said that we feel always that there has to be some sentient source controlling things, managing things. But he says in the universal spectrum that we are living in as a hologram, the hologram is a living, breathing entity. And because it's part of a greater living, breathing entity that's a part of another. When he says living, he doesn't mean with cells and tissue, but he means with consciousness, beyond consciousness, actually. So to him, the question is stupid because, I mean, he doesn't say that, but it's like, why are you asking such a thing? You know, because it's just natural. It's natural. It's natural to have such incredibly divine order in your life, in the world, in the universe. It's natural. What's not natural is what we're going through. You know, it's like, you know, we have to have other people come in and help us manage things because we can't get to the source of naturalness. So, you know, I've forgotten where I was going with all of that.
Well, you know, yeah, it's like, you know, how easy it is to think. Like, you know, okay, I was raised Catholic, you know, and there's mortal sin and venial sin, and venial sin can be forgiven, but mortal sin, ooh, boy, if you don't go to confession and you die with that mortal sin unconfessed, bye-bye, down you go, right? I was like, oh, well, you know, God punished me. God is punishing me for this. So, you know, like, you know, as if there is this sentient being going, look at Christine Hayes down there. Oh, she was late for school and she didn't do her phonics for second grade. We're going to have to arrange for her to fall and skin her knee. Yeah, that'll teach her. You know?
Oh, but I was such a good little girl. I never did that.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm quite sure. Anyway, like there was a landlady that I had in Chicago on the North Side. And, you know, Chicago, we're very glad to see spring come. But sometimes you get a late snow. And Mrs. Nagy, would be shoveling the walk, you know. It would be, April 20th, we'd had warm weather and flowers, and suddenly we get this late snow. And, Mrs. Nagy, and I'd come out of my apartment and she'd be shoveling the walk. I would help her, of course, but, I would say, "Oh, Mrs. Nagy, what happened to spring?" And she didn't have great English, and she would say, "No spring, winter, God punish me." God punish me. I said, "Well, Mrs. Nagy, it's actually the whole city. It's just snow. It's nature." No. But I had a friend in our meditation fellowship, who brought it up and said, "Well, there's karma, and it takes 100%. Oh, no, that's not a good relevant story. We'll drop that. But it reminds me of another story that came up when you were describing in the video that we saw about how the holographic reality and the connection between the hologram that is the brain, but the brain is really the servant of the heart-centered hologram, the heart brain, as you would call it, that is where the real magic of our power as sentient beings in realizing the holographic nature of the universe. That's the place from which we can affect our own realization and also our effect on the world around us. And it reminded me, of course, of the story of the movie The Matrix, which is such a powerful cultural influence. And as soon as it came out, everybody's going, "Oh my gosh, isn't this kind of like what the Hindus say about reality, and it's all illusion? And here comes Neo, and he's the one, and he's the the redeemer who's going to free humanity because he's the one who is seen through illusion, and then ultimately he's got the power to when the bad guys are firing guns at him, he just stops the bullets in midair and drops them, right?" Well, it was a really cool story because that's not what happened. That's what everybody tends to, in their short-term version of the story is, "Oh yeah, Neo was the one, and he woke up and he penetrated the matrix and was able to control it because he saw through the illusion." That's not what happened. Neo died. Neo failed, and the agents, came through and they killed him. And back on the ship, his lover, they're not lovers yet, but she loves him, is, he's there in his big chair and he's plugged into the matrix. But when you die in the matrix, your body dies, right? And she watches, the blip go bleep, 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 and then flatline. And Neo's dead. And she cradles his head and whispers into his ear and says, "You can't die, Neo. You cannot. I love you. You are the one." And that's the turning point of the story. It's her love for him exercises some miraculous redemptive power that within the reality of his heart, whispering those words into his ear at the last possible moment, his consciousness kicks into divine power and has the breakthrough into, and suddenly, he goes back into the matrix and kicks ass. And
Wow. No, I never saw that movie.
Yeah.
I never saw any of the Matrix movies. I saw little scenes, but I've never seen any of the movies. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's well worth seeing. I think you'd enjoy it. It's the violence in it is very stylized, ridiculously stylized, actually, but compelling. Anyway, so, well, are we ready for our next video?
Yeah, I want to set it up a little bit first. It's very short, and I just could, if we're going to talk about the holographic universe, and you noticed in what I read this fellow Davis or whatever, he's referring to a video game to show you how if you look at it, it's a particle, and if you don't, it's a wave. In other words, if you look at it, it's there. If you don't look at it, it's not there. So I could not resist bringing up, of course, the virtual reality that I work with, that I integrate with at Second Life, and why I'm so hot on it, why I work with it so, and I do so much with it. And I don't take a lot of time. It's a small piece of the picture, but yeah, I think it's an important piece, nevertheless. Not about Second Life, but about virtual realities within virtual realities and how that works. Because you don't have to be in a video game or a Second Life or any of those things to experience creating your own virtual membrane that allows you to be creative, to design your spiritual atmosphere, and in doing so, connect to a greater truth. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more after we watch this video. But what this is I just snipped it out of something you might find it familiar, at least in the audio part, of something much longer I had created. So that's why I'm saying welcome to Second Life, because it's part of this other thing. But it's just very short, and it gives you a context for why I am in there. And I actually spend a lot of the little bit of money I have just paying the rent in there so I can do what I do. And so let's just watch it, and then we'll get back and talk about it.
Okay, so this is called The Virtual World, and it's about a 5-minute video. So we'll share this with you now and be back with you in about 5 minutes. Please enjoy.
Hello and welcome to the New Earth Star Sanctuary in the virtual world of Second Life. I have previously made videos about this sanctuary, but with this video I wanted to create an especially strong connection between the viewer and what I am manifesting in this realm. My Inner Planes mentor, Thoth speaks to me about the virtual, that it is an ideal platform which allows subtle energies to interact with the neural responses of the brain. The virtual world is prominent within the first level stages of creating a new Earth experience for the individual and thus groups of individuals. This is therefore a powerful quantum space for spiritual communion, healing, and life-giving. Science reveals that those active in the virtual, while electrodes are attached to the brain, are firing the same synapses they would if they were physically doing these things. The things one can do in the virtual harkens as a facsimile to the freedom souls have on higher dimensions of experience. Those of us who make the virtual our second life see how powerfully it affects our non-virtual lives in positive ways. My SL mission is to expand in some capacity this experience to those who will never come into the virtual world. It is a commitment of time and energy, and if one enters true immersion into the habitat, it is a financial investment as well. So how may I offer a connection to those outworlders? This is something I develop through my videos, and I am always looking for new and more experiential ways to do that. There is another element of my presence in Second Life which is probably even more essential, and that is the creation of sub-realms within the greater realm, which manifest membranes between the physical and subtle worlds, being broadcast through the interweb out into the Gaia receptors and global consciousness. Even with an audience of one, just me, this would be a viable dynamic. However, with the inclusion of others experiencing it, whether in-world or outside the medium, it expands the interactive potential.
All right, welcome back. Well, Second Life is his own amazing world. Um, so, would you like to share with us how this came to be and your understanding of the activating reality that this is for you and on a larger level as well?
Yes. Just briefly touched on this before, but how I became involved was about 2000, I believe it was 2008. And I was going through a very difficult period of time in my physical body and emotionally as well, mostly physically, but both impacted, you know. And so I was down to like 79 pounds because I had bad colitis and stuff, and I just didn't want to eat because it hurt so bad. So I was on my way out, kind of, you know. And I was reading books about about the afterlife and talking to Thoth about it, or whatever. Not that he was saying I was going anywhere, but I just was asking questions. I was getting ready, man. I mean, I was just leaving, you know. And so I happened to see something on television. I used to watch television then, and it was talking about Second Life. And I saw that they showed this panther that was the avatar of the person running through this jungle. And I was like, oh my God, because I was lying there in my chair, you know, trying to do my work with a mouse, you know, and just suffering constantly. And I was like, oh my God, I wish I could do that. You know, this, my soul was just quivering to get out of the situation. So I delved into Second Life. And it is a delve, it's an immersion. You don't casually check it out. If you casually check it out, you check out pretty quickly. It's an immersion. So the more I got into it, the more I felt I belonged there. And this was in the earlier days when it was really much more primitive than it is now. The technology is always advancing. And I discovered that I was feeling better because I was, you know, my soul, my energy, my creativity was coming to life again. I could go to spiritual places and things. There's so much spirituality in there. There's the other stuff too, just like in a real world. But, you know, there was so much, and I could go there without leaving my chair. Just, you know, I could move my hand and I could do the mouse. And then I got better. So then I decided I could go horseback riding and dancing. And then I was a co-founder of a dance company. We put on these huge shows, and like 80 people showed up in their avatar bodies from all over the world. I was getting better and better and better. I still have health problems, obviously, but I mean, I tried everything else. I tried, you know, vitamin C, what do you call them, infusions in the arm and all this stuff. I'm not saying that none of that helped me, but it was not until my soul picked up with this ability to move into the spirit this way that I really turned the corner. So that's my little story. But once I became involved, Thoth encouraged me to continue, encouraged me to create an avatar for him that I've worked on for years. And I finally have it right, but it took a long time. And he said at the time what I've shared with you on this video. So, but you know, I've been lately I've been investing even more in it. He's been guiding me to do that, even though it's kind of touchy for me financially, creating these worlds that nobody's seeing really, except in a few videos, because it's good to use them for the videos, but that's not the main thing. It's creating them. And I'm saying to Thoth, look, every time I pay the bill on these simulated lands, I'm going, couldn't we do with just a little less, And I'm receiving, it's okay. Let's work with it a while longer. He's saying, when you're creating, and I didn't realize this, I thought that creating these reality zones was attaching to ones that were already there to bring them forward more into this world experience. And that's true. But more recently, he's been saying to me, it's not only that, what you create shows up in that reality. You are creating, not because I'm all powerful, but because everybody can do that. See, this is a way to create another experience in the higher dimension from our spiritual continuum. And so it doesn't mean that everything looks exactly like what I created in Second Life, but it creates that spectrum. It moves it into that field. So I said to him, okay, Second Life is for everyone, and it isn't for most people because it's so immersive. And to do what I'm doing, it costs a certain amount of money and certainly a lot of time and good computer. So it's not for everyone. So how can we translate this for other people that have that creative spirit, that have that ability, and they're, maybe they're already doing it and they don't know it. Maybe they do know it. Tell me more. So what I received was that, yeah, this is a really good way to do it and it suits me. So, that's why I'm doing it. But everybody that has a creative spirit, which is just about everybody, and they really, are creating things in their lives, whether it's pictures, paintings, dance, storytelling, scripts for movies, creating the movies, all of these things form a path into some kind of real presence. Now, a caveat here is if it's something really awful, again, it's contractive. It has a lifespan. It's not going to hang on forever. But if it's expansive, it's of beauty, it's of spiritual beauty, it's going to create ripples. And those ripples are going to affect and touch people, not just on this planet, but in the continuum that we're speaking about of the hologram. Bubbles within bubbles within bubbles, or membranes more likely. So anything you're doing that's of a creative spark is going to be feeding that. And the more you realize that, the more you can intentionally say, okay, this is the talent that I have, or ability to create this particular thing. I'm going to see it, not just in my own little world creating it. Maybe I sell it, make a little money or whatever. No, I'm going to see it as something that expands everyone, that expands the hologram that I am in, that touches the next hologram, the next one, the next one, the next one, creates a beautiful reality in another dimension that is connective to ours, only it's of a greater light, a greater expansion. So that's my shared moment that I could share with you how you could do this without going into a virtual reality on the computer. However, he also talks about the computers, that the whole idea of how computers work and how the internet works, the connection between the two, that's not something that was just invented. It came to us from the natural order of the universe. And it went into people's minds and they went, oh, let's create this, So yeah, the internet could be a confusion. It could carry bad stuff, all kinds of awful things. But the technology of it, the way it's set up and how it operates is divine. It's part of the natural order of the universe. The hologram works that way. So if you want to know the technicalities of hologram, look at the technicalities of how a computer works and how it connects to the internet and how the internet works, because that is a limited but yet truthful version of the greater holographic universe. So if we have that knowledge, why don't we just really work with this? Why don't we get a dedicated servers, and like Second Life has a dedicated server, but other things that works with that energy, and how can we express it in other ways, not just the kind of virtual realities I'm talking about. That's great, but how can we work further? How can we create other dimensional patterns and expressions that connect into the greater universe, the greater hologram? So, this is something that I think is a really untapped field. I shouldn't say untapped. I'm sure there are people who are tapping it, but I don't know them. And, develop this into because the ultra beings, the ones in the starships and whatever, many years ago in the 70s, this was way before I knew much about computers. They were talking about plasma-based computers, and that these were actually biocomputers. They had biological synthesis in them. And I made a video not long ago, me reading this folder that I came across that had all these diagrams and these systems in there. I did this in 1978, I think. And it was showing, it says bioplasmic blah, and has little connectors, and you're just seeing the schematic patterns. He had me drawing this by hand, and I think, what am I doing this for? And I was doing it because now I can look back at it and I can see it and I can go, aha, and I can make the connection and I can talk about it and inspire people and maybe give them some information that could be useful. So I could go on, but I just, I wanted to share that part about it because I think it's relative.
Yeah, it ties into what we've been talking about, this whole time today, in that, okay, we take the lever of the reality of quantum, the reality of that lever in our consciousness as being a transformative dynamic that we have the sovereign power to utilize. And then, we go to something as simple as, okay, here we are on this Zoom call, and I am, we are moving. I'm currently coming to you from a B&B bedroom, guest room. Well, no, I'm not, because here you can see behind me is an elegant library of a scholar and artist and man of culture, right? Well, of course, as most of us know, Zoom allows you to do that. So this, feels natural to me. This would be the sort of room I would create. It's kind of like a room I grew up in my family's big house in Oak Park when I was a kid. And, there's a story for those who saw, the very popular video back in the day, The Secret, the power of magnetism, where talking about vision boards, and there's this successful businessman who said, well, I created this vision board about exactly the house that I wanted to have someday, and I pulled a picture from a magazine and I put it on the vision board. Yeah, I'm going to live there someday. But then, time went on. I put the vision board in the closet. I went on to other things, and then about 7, 8 years later, moved into a house, on the beach, kind of like the one I'd seen. And said, I was explaining to my son about the power of vision boards, and I said, well, here, let me show you. Let me get out my old vision board from 7 years ago. And he pulls it out of the closet, and he shows him the picture of the house that he wanted to live in. And lo and behold, the picture in the magazine that he cut out is of the very house that he now lives in. He went, he just like, he manifested not just a house like that, he manifested that house, right? Because he had created it. So I have no doubt that before too very long, if I continue, to do Zoom interviews from this virtual, gorgeous, elegant, lined with books library, that I will shortly be speaking to you from the actual physical version of it, because it's, it's that virtual manifesting power that we have.
Well, let's hope it's a facsimile, because you don't know where that place is. It might be in the wilds of Siberia.
Oh gosh, well, yeah, okay. We'll just say Dear manifesting divine Lord power, I want a room just like this one,
That's good.
right in Napa Valley or someplace, right? It's like I know a fellow meditator in Self-Realization Fellowship, um, very brilliant guy from India, and he's works in computers, and became a follower of the meditation teachings. And I know that I want to be near an ashram, of Yogananda's ashrams in California. So I need to move with my family. I need a job in computers in California. And so he's in India and he's making outreach and everything, but he's meditating and affirming and saying, "Oh Lord, I need to manifest a high-level computer job paying so much money in one of the states of the United States, beginning with the letter C." Right? He ends up in Colorado. You know,
Oh,
they
that's
offered me a job in
yeah.
Denver. I had to take it. I said, "Oh Lord, I made a mistake. I meant California."
Maybe he didn't realize there was more than one
Right.
state with
Well, with the letter C, and then it goes, "Oh, okay, you want it? Here it is." Oh, Colorado doesn't fit anyway. So eventually, he ended up in California. But
yeah, yeah.
just a joke about it.
Well, as we're getting sort of close to the end here, I'd like to sort of segue into something that I'm going to be doing that's really exciting to me. And I'm going to be working with a woman who I really met recently through, through the computer. And she lives in the wilds of a rainforest in Washington State. And her life story is really quite incredible. Um, but she also creates these beautiful sacred dolls. Her name is Kimberly Montgomery, and she and I are going to be working together. She's making the dolls, not me, and her craftsmanship is incredible, but it's more than that. She's connecting. But what my part is going to be is guiding the the energy of what these dolls are going to represent. For instance, our first series is going to be on the Dakini dolls, representing the true Dakini in the inner earth. I've done a video on that, and that video people could see to see what I'm talking about. And these true Dakinis are the originals. And the dolls aren't just pretty dolls. They, and I'm sure other people, do beautiful things too. But I'm speaking about what we're doing here. Her dolls have they're vessels. They're vessels for uh, intelligences to come through. And maybe some are shamans, some are, maybe some for the future in the inner earth, whatever. But when I saw these dolls, they were speaking to me. And so what we're going to do together is I'm going to set up through Thoth and through the inner earth beings that are helping me work with this. They're not going to all, the dolls aren't going to all represent inner earth beings, but I mean, they're helping me to find the formats that need to be presented. And I'll make a video or some information on that collection. And then we will, she will create these dolls. And she'll tune into it, I have no doubt, and they're going to be really spectacular. So I'm going to show you the one she sent me as a gift. It's really quite beautiful. I don't know if you could see her really well. Isn't that something? And it's set on this, and this is one of the smaller ones. She makes bigger, more elaborate ones, and she dresses them immaculately with all kinds of natural, everything on this doll is natural. And of course, she makes the faces, and she puts shungite into clay. So the dolls are loaded with shungite and other things, crystals. And as I said, everything is natural. The fabric is natural, all of it. And I had a really incredible experience before this doll came into my periphery and what she was doing with them. Where rather recently, where a being came to me who looked like this, one of the oracle tribe from the inner earth. And it's a longer story than that, but I'm just shortcutting it. the same attire, not necessarily the face, but the same attire and the same. And so when she said she was going to make me a doll, I received that it was going to be a doll representing this entity, this personage. And so she went to work. I didn't describe it to her, but when she finished it, there it was. It was like I had seen, and I didn't share any of that information with her. So I know she's truly gifted with this, and I feel the communing energy coming through this vessel, just as if you had a crystal that you use, you know. So I just wanted to share that another aspect of creativity that creates a holographic field, a bubble. And I don't know where it's going to lead, but we're going to be doing this, and and she's always felt that these dolls, her idea is to place them in grids all over the world, by grids and people's possessions, but live on the different grids. And so this is just an expansion of what she's already very talented and doing. And so it's just giving it another level, another layer when we work together on this. So I just wanted to share that. Yeah, I can't hear you, Michael.
That's something I think many people have experienced, that when a representative artwork of a human form, sometimes animal as well, but particularly of human, carries a presence, carries a vibration, can be a kind of vessel, as you say. Certainly, many people have experienced that with images of great saints, great souls, who, that the essence of that image has a divine origin, and it carries that vibration. And so with the right artistry, and the right attunement, that can be, a very powerful activating presence. So I think it's a beautiful thing. And I can imagine that a lot of people who hear this will be interested. And, this is not envisaged as a big revenue stream thing. It's a sharing. And yes, obviously, Kimberly Montgomery, receives an energy exchange for her beautiful work, and we hope it's an abundant one, because it's beautiful work. So with that, I think we are wrapping up for today. And is there anything else you wanted to say, Maia?
Yeah, beginning with this show, the on the Thoth quantum teachings shows, I'm going to be ending them, at least for now, with a very short, little over 1 minute and 30-second video, because talking about my portal and showing it, revealing it, my subscription portal, my NESIA subscription portal. It's an ad, obviously, but I want to open that door a little more. I would like to, let people know that it exists, and what a trove of my work of all these years it contains. And of course, I continue to add to it. So with each of these particular shows, I'm going to end with this video. And if you feel so guided to check it out, please do, or share it with other people as well.
Yeah, and when Maia is referring to her NESIA work, that's an acronym for New Earth Star Inner Academy, NESIA.
That's right.
Or NESIA, which is an incredibly rich trove of the kind of material that we've been sharing with you here on Blue Star Rising. Well worth your time. So we encourage everybody to check it out and see if that resonates for you. So thanks again, everybody, for being with us, and we look forward to seeing you next time. God bless us all. Be well. Bye for now.
Goodbye, everyone.